year is about 1913. One of two brothers comes to Arizona, to Phoenix from Chicago. His name was Warren McArthur. Now, Warren had been directed here by his physician. He was told to find someplace warm and dry. Warren selected Phoenix. He got to Phoenix 1913, loved it immediately, started working on getting his next oldest brother to join him. Now, Charles joined in 1915. Together we have now two McArthur brothers, both of them kind of bouncing around looking for adventure, but both kind of entrepreneurial spirited. They together ended up making jobs for themselves. They purchased a Dodge dealership here in downtown Phoenix. That year was about 1918. Now, vehicles weren't brand new. They were kind of selling themselves. Everybody saw them kind of as a necessity now, but these brothers proved themselves as excellent salesmen. They turned that first dealership into 9 separate dealerships. While they were talking to people, selling them vehicles, they were getting a lot of feedback about what people loved about Arizona. The McArthur brothers, of course, loved the sunshine. They loved the cactus. They loved the choices of topography, lakes, rivers, streams, mountains, and deserts, of course. Most everyone else that they talked to liked the same thing. So these brothers, meeting all these people, they get the idea that tourism is about to pop here in Arizona. They figure the secret of Phoenix is about to be understood. They want to be part of that tourism idea. They didn't know exactly how they were going to contribute, so they came up with an idea called the Wonderbus. Now, it was one of the vehicles that they were selling. It was a Dodge vehicle that they had outfitted to take people on tours of Arizona. So from those individuals, they got a lot of information, called that vehicle the Wonderbus. I have a picture of that Wonderbus I'm going to share with you in a little bit. The brothers get this idea after talking to all these people. They want to build a hotel here. Now, neither one of them knew anything about building a hotel. They did, however, have an older brother who was Albert Chase McArthur. Now, Albert Chase had been gifted with most of the brains in the family, had gone to Harvard, had studied architecture. Once he completed his education, he had been mentored in architecture by a guy out of Oak Park, Illinois, by the name of Frank Lloyd Wright. So now we have Albert Chase McArthur working with Frank Lloyd Wright in Oak Park, hearing rumblings from his younger brothers that they're going to build a hotel in Phoenix. So Albert Chase, of course, knows his younger brothers, knows they're not capable of building a hotel, so he comes out to check on them. So now we have 3 McArthur brothers here. They all get together and they decide they're going to build this hotel. McArthur brothers in Wright, Frank Lloyd Wright, but they contracted Frank Lloyd Wright to come on to this project. That contract was valued at $10,000. He had many successes, a few successes using an idea of his called the textile block. That textile block was simply the forms that would contain the ingredients to build all those blocks. They were able to get started in actually assembling this hotel. And I use that word assembly because all of these blocks that were created on site here by Frank Lloyd Wright and his team of students that he brought with him here, all of that assembly work on these blocks, and the reason I'm saying assembly is that no mortar or mud was required to hold those blocks together. The blocks were so finely crafted that they fit together like giant puzzles. So 250,000 blocks all fitting together like a giant puzzle, both inside and outside. Now, don't confuse these blocks with adobe blocks. They are not structural. Our blocks are mostly decorative. They cover up all of the actual structure of the hotel, which at the time, of course, was lumber and timber and even some metal work. Frank Lloyd Wright contracted. With that contract, he brought his wife, he brought all of his students from his architectural school in Wisconsin. They get here, they actually start working on the hotel in early summer of 1928, gets them to grand opening of the Arizona Biltmore, February 23rd, 1929. So roughly about 6 months, between 6 and 8 months of actual labor. an incredible feat. We have to thank for that a lot of the labor that they did not require in making the mud. We also have the fact that all of the ingredients for everything they did here was located pretty much right on site. Entering into this space, the doorways, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, he liked his entrances to be compressed and compacted. I like to compare them to a mouse hole. You see a little small mouse hole, knowing, of course, that on the other side of the wall is another big expanse of space. So all of the doorways we enter in today are compressed and compacted similar to these. What happens as the size of the room increases in size, the height of those doors gets taller. Not necessarily wider, just taller. So the doorways stay the same. So we have compressed doorways. We also have examples of organic architecture. Frank Lloyd Wright recognized very early on that copper was readily available here in Arizona. He put a lot of copper to work. We have copper on the exterior of these support beams. Copper was relatively light, so less expensive to transport. Most of the copper used here at the Arizona Biltmore was mined in a town only 60 miles from here called Morenci. Now, also, this room showcases carpet patterns. Every carpet pattern that we will walk on today through our tour, they are all based on original sketches of Frank Lloyd Wright. As the carpets wear thin, there is a committee of about 20 people that decide whether that same pattern is going to stay or if it's going to be replaced. This Aztec Room was important to Mr. Wrigley in that he was a huge fan of the movies being created in Hollywood. I mentioned Mr. Wrigley was one of the initial investors. A lot of people followed his lead, and then a lot of those people lost all their investment. Now, Mr. Wrigley became the sole owner of the Arizona Biltmore, and what saved Mr. Wrigley was that Mr. Wrigley was a cash buyer, so he had not been as heavily invested in the stock market. And also, Mr. Wrigley produced chewing gum, one of the cheapest items that sold the most during that the Depression was chewing gum. Now, chewing gum kept Mr. Wrigley very well off, and also chewing gum provided a service because in some cases, people who could not afford a meal could chew gum, and that would curb their appetite. Welcome everyone to the Gold Room. This room received its name from the actual 24-karat gold leafing applied to the ceiling in this room, second only to the Taj Mahal in the world in the amount of gold leafing added to a construction project. Now this Gold Room, originally the dining room in the hotel, and once you were invited, and you needed to be invited by Mr. Wrigley. He would invite celebrities and diplomats and all kinds of the creme de la creme of society at the time. Once you were invited and you accepted that invitation, you still had to pay Mr. Wrigley $30 a day to stay here. Now that included all 3 of your meals. This tapestry, 25 feet wide, 8.5 feet tall. This tapestry, the artist's name was Maynard Dixon. He had been commissioned for 3 works of art here. This is oil-based paint applied to Belgian linen. You can see this tapestry is not enclosed or framed in any way. It has to continually breathe, and fortunately, the planners put it on the north wall as far away from the damaging sunlight and temperature changes from that south wall. So here we have, this is entitled The Legend of Earth and Sun. It is a tribute to the Hopi Native American culture here in Arizona. This tapestry, completed by, the artist's name was Maynard Dixon, completed by Mr. Dixon in time for the grand opening of the hotel, February 23rd, 1929. As I mentioned, we have the secondary tapestry. It is also a tribute to one of the Native American cultures here in Arizona. This is a tribute to the Navajo culture. You'll see the woven basket and the turquoise necklace over at that end of this tapestry. Now, Maynard Dixon was passed away, and a woman by the name of Edith Hamlin took over to complete this tapestry. Now, Edith Hamlin had been the spouse of Maynard Dixon. Frank Lloyd Wright was contracted by the McArthurs. He made the trip out here with his students. Frank Lloyd Wright had not been to Arizona before when he arrived. He fell in love with Arizona as well. We know that because he built his family home here in Scottsdale. He also started a secondary architectural school here. So Frank Lloyd Wright, while he's working with his student, Albert Chase, they're putting together designs on the hotel. He's also creating this pencil sketch. It's called Cactus, Flowers, and Saguaro Forms. It was initially submitted to a magazine called Liberty Magazine. Liberty Magazine did not see the value in it, returned it, in this case, returned it to Mrs. Wright. Now, Mrs. Wright treasured that original sketch and gave it to Mrs. Talley when the ownership of the Arizona Biltmore changed in the year 1972 from the Wrigleys to the Talley family. So Mrs. Wright gave that original sketch to Mrs. Talley. She took over as the owner of the Arizona Biltmore about 3 weeks into ownership. Mrs. Talley recognizes that Mr. Wrigley had not added the safety feature of those sprinkler heads. Mrs. Talley arranges to have that work begun. 3 weeks into our ownership, a welder's torch caught fire on the 4th floor of this building. The top floor, over 6,000 of the original block were damaged. All 6,000 had to be replaced. They were damaged by water or smoke or heat, etc. We have here portrayed the Saguaro cactus. Now, bear with me, the Saguaro cactus, that's as good as I can do on short notice. The Saguaro cactus only grows in the Sonoran Desert. The Sonoran Desert, admittedly, is huge. It goes all the way down into Old Mexico. It even stretches another 45, 50 miles to the north. So that saguaro only grows here. It is portrayed in this stained glass along with all of the colors of our cactus blooms and our citrus. So oranges, limes, grapefruit, etc., all portrayed as a nice warm welcome to all of our guests who enter in the hotel. These two statues, originally designed in pencil by Frank Lloyd Wright, he called them his garden sprites. A lot of times he would take his pencil sketch and ask for additional help from other artists. In this case, an Italian sculptor by the name of Adolfo Iannelli helped him out. Those original sprites were decorative pieces at a place called Midway Gardens on the shores of Lake Michigan during the World's Fair that was in Chicago in 1914. Now, these sprites were misplaced after that World's Fair. The original sprites had begun to crumble. They fell into disrepair and were lost to us. They were found, however. The students here in Scottsdale were notified. They were able to remake them, this time in a much more durable substance, similar to the blocks. Now, we were gifted these two sprites welcome our guests. You'll see them. They're kind of prayerful or meditative. The legend behind these sprites is that they are ridding the hotel of any evil spirits that might be waiting to spoil your happy hour or your coffee break or your weekend. Frank Lloyd Wright wanted the venting involved in this block to capture a majority of the sun's warmth and heat during the winter months as the sun was traveling on a lower arc along the south side of the building. So now this was originally an exterior wall. So you'll see another wall has been added, but that was after central heating. So these breezeways, as they were called, would capture that warm air and bring it into the hallways to help warm the hallways. So early on, of course, there were fireplaces to help warm up the warm mornings. So there was a couple of ways of how we warmed the hotel. What about cooling the hotel? It was still Arizona. It was still hot. So Mr. Wrigley's solution for cooling the hotel was he put a key in the door and locked it. The hotel was only open from the months of November through April. So once it started to get hot, boom, lock up, invited all his guests to go north. If you recall, we have El Tovar, a great hotel built on the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Also La Posada Inn in Winslow, Arizona, a very popular spot built in that same time. We are headed now into the hallway towards the mystery room. On both sides of this hallway, assortment of archival photographs. A lot of them are regarding the construction of the hotel. So if you are interested in construction and you want to come back up here, please come up here and spend as much time as you like. This is part of the public space of the hotel. You are available to come up here. This is October of 1928. You'll see the Aztec Room beginning to take shape, main building. You'll see outlying buildings here where some of the people were staying at the time. You can see the guests in the hotel are comfortable here in the shade. We have the uniformed culinarian checking for orders. We also have this vehicle that looked like an armored car. That's, I think, where the chilling champagne was being kept, so that made the travel in this bus a little bit nicer. Come on in, everyone. Grab a seat. Get a comfortable spot. We'll be here for a few minutes. This, I think, is where most of the fun happened after dinner, after 9:30 at night. There was a ticker tape machine in this room that would provide the day's activities from the stock market to kind of put everybody's minds at ease about what that stock market was doing. Because these people, if you recall now, had survived the Depression and the crash of the stock market. This room also became very popular during Prohibition. What appears to be a bookcase without much fanfare becomes the back bar for the events that would happen in this room after dinner. Some of the items on the bookcase had been carved out by the patrons to be used to sneak their pocket flasks. Most of the gentlemen would carry a flask during Prohibition, and they would be able to get that filled up in this room at night and then carry it off back to their room. Just to take advantage of this, you'll see this door is kind of wide, and this was the library. So the idea behind this is they wanted a quiet door, but it's pinned here as opposed to hinged, so that this door really is nicely balanced and very quiet. Over the fireplace in this room is symbolic of the grand opening of the Arizona Biltmore. That key was thrown out of an airplane, a little crop duster type airplane. Wrigley was a little aggressive. He invited 600 people to come to the grand opening of the Arizona Biltmore. He only had room for about 240 people, give or take. And of course, all 600 people wanted to come. They wanted to bring additional people with them. So Mr. Wrigley's solution was to have opening night on 3 consecutive nights. So 3 sold-out nights.